You know what I like about Florida? Absolutely nothing. That's right. Nothing. There is nothing to like. Look, here's the reality about Florida. They're not a good team. They're not a good program. And historically, both of those things are also true. People keep talking. I think we talked about this a lot during the offseason, but people keep talking like, when's Florida going to get back to what they used to be? This is what Florida used to be. This is what you're seeing the last few years from Florida. That is Florida. Okay? It's not a fluke that Florida's been so bad for the last 15 years. That's the norm. The fluke was the 16 or 17 year period where Florida was actually good. That was the fluke. Florida's been playing football for 100 years, 10 different decades. Florida has been playing football. In only 2 of those 10 decades has Florida been any good at all. And I'm not specifically talking about national titles. A lot of people think you got to win national titles to be good. Not just talking about national titles. Florida has only ever won conference titles in 2 of the 10 decades that they have been playing football. This is who Florida is. Okay? From Steve Spurrier to Urban Meyer, that was the fluke. From like 1991 to 2008, when they won a bunch of SEC titles, the only SEC titles they ever won. That's it. And a couple of national titles. That's it. The 80s, nothing. 70s, 60s, 50s. The 2010s, nothing. The 2020s, nothing. 2 of 10 decades. The 90s and the 2000s, 2 of 10 decades, Florida has been a respectable football program. 8 out of 10 decades, Florida has been absolute trash and garbage like they are right now. So, when is Florida going to get back to the Florida that we're used to? This is the Florida that we're used to. In the last 10 years, Florida's got 4 losing seasons. Almost half the time. You have a losing record. You're not... Remember the good old days when Florida fans used to make fun of Georgia fans like during the Mark Richt era? Well, what was Georgia doing during that period? Well, they were winning multiple SEC titles, 2 of them. They averaged 10.5 wins a year for 15 years. This was all under Mark Richt while Florida fans were pointing and laughing. What's Florida doing now? Half the time, they've got a losing season. 4 of the last 10 years, losing season. 1 in 5 against Georgia in the last 6 years, and the only win came during COVID, and anybody with half a brain has so discounted the COVID season, it's almost like it doesn't even matter. But I don't want to take that away from you. So, congratulations. You do have that COVID win. But we need to stop all this talk about how long is Florida going to be down? Florida's not down. This is what Florida is. What you should be asking is Florida ever going to have a pop again? They had a pop. They had a pop. And now they're right back down to what they've always been, which is a bad football program. That's what they've been. 80% of the time, 8 out of 10 decades, Florida has been horrific. They're horrific in the 2020s, back-to-back losing seasons right now. They are horrific in the 2010s, multiple losing seasons, no SEC championships. Yes, in the 2000s and the 90s, they were a great football program a lot of time in the 90s and 2000s, a 17-year period. Prior to that, like I said, 80s, 70s, 60s, 40s, 30s, 20s, however far you want to go back, absolute garbage. 2 out of 10 decades, okay? So stop with the wins. Florida going to be good. Now, as far as this particular team goes, I've thought a lot about this game and breaking it down, and what about Graham Mertz, and what about Florida's running backs, and Ricky Pearsall, and Florida's defense is better than last year, and I've thought about all this, and how does that match up with... And you know what? It just comes down to this. It comes down to a couple of things, simple things. I want you to ask yourself this question right now. Who are the 2 most physical teams Florida has played this season so far? Who do you think they are? I know who they are. Utah and Kentucky. What happened? What happened? Florida got beat up, beat down, drug around, and embarrassed in both games. Now ask yourself, where does Georgia stack up in terms of physicality with those two teams? You could stop right there. Game over. But coaching you can't ignore. Kirby Smart's the best coach going today in college football. It's just a fact. Nick Saban's the greatest of all time. Kirby's the best at it today. And he is going to embarrass this man-child that Florida has coaching, Billy Napier. I don't care that Florida's 5-2. They're about one win better than people thought they would be. Okay? Look at their schedule. Georgia, Missouri, LSU, Florida State. Those are all losses. And then you got Arkansas. 50-50. You might beat Arkansas. Breaking news, they're pretty physical too. They're not a great team, but they're pretty physical. And you don't do well with that. You don't do well with that. You know, all this attention on Ohio State and Southern Cal for being soft, it's time to start looking at Florida. Sometimes as SEC people, we got to look in our own backyard and we got to face reality. Florida's a soft fucking team. That's why they lose to Kentucky. That's why they've lost to Kentucky something like, what is it, 2 of the last 3, 3 of the last 5? They lose to Utah. You pushed around. You're not physical. Georgia is. Does that make you mad? Does that make you mad? Probably does. You know, the only thing worse than being a Florida Gator fan is the fact that you have to wake up every day living in the state of Florida, for the most of you anyway. I know there's some of you that probably live other places, but good God, I can't be the only one that's ready for the final hurricane. I can't be. And it's coming. Florida's a lot narrower than it used to be. Think about it. And getting narrower every day. Graham Mertz. There's a lot of talk about Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz, good quarterback. Look at his completion percentage. Graham Mertz averages like 2 yards of completion in the air. This guy, this is Captain Dink and Dunk here, this Graham Mertz. And Ricky Pearsall's a good wide receiver. We'll shut him down. You better have somebody else to throw the ball. Georgia doesn't have Brock Bowers. We're not Alabama or Ohio State. I mean, Alabama and Ohio State may run around crying because they lose one particular player or another. Oh, we can't win a game because we lost a player. Don't be so one-dimensional, idiots. That's what's wrong with Ohio State and Alabama now, putting all their eggs in one basket. Georgia doesn't do it. What do you look just the basic level of misunderstanding that some of these Florida fans seem to have about Georgia sans Brock Bowers is alarming. So Brock Bowers had the Auburn game was a big one they like to point at. So what did he have? 8 catches for 140 yards or something? Well, if you wouldn't have had them 8 catches on it, what do you think was going to happen on those 8 plays against Auburn if Brock Bowers wasn't in the game? If Carson Beck was going to go 0 for 8 for 0 yards? What do you think? Like Ladd McConkey, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Ra Thomas was Mississippi State's leading wide receiver last year. He's now with Georgia. Dominic Lovett, Missouri's leading wide receiver last year, now with Georgia. Oscar Delp, 4-star tight end. Lawson Lucky and Pierce Spurling, 4-star tight end. There are weapons everywhere. We're not Alabama or Ohio State, okay? We're not solely dependent on any one player. It sucks that Brock is gone. I hate it for him. I hate it for everybody. I like watching good football players play football, and we're robbed of that with Brock Bowers being hurt, okay? But Georgia's not a one-man band. A.D. Mitchell missed 9 of Georgia's 15 games last year. He was our best wide receiver. George Pickens missed 13 of Georgia's 15 games the year before. Jalen Carter missed half the season last year. He's a top 10 pick. Nolan Smith missed the entire second half of the season. A top first-round pick. What is wrong with you people? This is why, we keep talking to Florida fans about their recruiting class. You've got a good recruiting class, okay? No one's denying that. You're working on a good recruiting class for next year, top 5 class. That's great, okay? Now do it 8 years in a row. Because that's what you're dealing with on Saturday when you face Georgia. So it's not, you don't lose Brock Bowers and then there's nobody else on the team that knows what they're doing. Georgia has recruited in the top 3. Every single player on Georgia's roster right now who was recruited and signed by Georgia was part of a top 3 recruiting class nationally. Georgia has recruited in the top 3 every single year for 5, 6 years in a row, whatever it's been, 7. Okay, you want Brock Bowers not going to win a game. A lot of y'all are going to look awfully stupid. And it's not just Florida fans that fall into this category of idiocy. There's a lot of college football fans on the internet who are under the idiotic impression that Georgia can't win a game without Brock Bowers. That they're going to go 0-5 the rest of the way because they don't have Brock Bowers. They've been telling me all year, well, Georgia wouldn't win a game, didn't have Brock Bowers. We're about to find out. About to find out against the 5-2 unranked Florida Gators team. Is this the worst team left on Georgia's schedule? It's close. It's between Florida and Georgia Tech. It's between Florida and Georgia Tech for who's the worst team left on Georgia's schedule. We got Ole Miss, Missouri, and Tennessee, which are miles beyond anything Georgia Tech and Florida are. Woo! Florida beat Tennessee. Yeah, because like Florida, Tennessee can't play on the road. Games in the swamp. They played again tomorrow. Tennessee beat you. We all know that, but it is what it is. Congratulations. It's your Super Bowl win, I guess. Or was that South Carolina? Come from Miami, beat South Carolina by 2. What you got, 30-something points, South Carolina? Boy, Florida's in for a rude awakening. Well, no, I was about to say, I'm not glad Brock Bowers is hurt. That was, I can't believe that thought even popped in my head. But it is going to be funny because what the Brock Bowers injury has done is provide Florida fans with like a glimmer of hope. What's the what's the Greek what's the, I don't know, actually I can say Greek mythology. What's the character in Greek mythology that is he's stuck somewhere or something and he just can't barely reach the piece of fruit or whatever it is on the tree, and he basically spends his whole life this far away from the, that's Florida when they noticed that Brock Bowers wasn't going to play. Wait a minute, we might be able to reach it. We might be able to reach it. No, or you might not. Yeah, but Florida really does think they have a chance in this game. Florida's lines of scrimmage. You want to talk football? Florida lines of scrimmage are going to be a problem here. I mentioned the problems they have against physical teams like Utah and Kentucky. Those problems are going to show up again today. Florida cannot protect Graham Mertz to save their life. He runs for his life. Did I read that he was under pressure 29 times in the South Carolina game? Wow. Now, Georgia doesn't get a ton of sacks, but they do a pretty good job of pressuring the QB. Graham Mertz is going to be running for his life, and Georgia will probably have 3 or 4 sacks in this game, even though they're not great at it, because Florida's offensive line is not good at all. Etienne and Johnson haven't suddenly gotten worse as running backs. They were good last year. They're good this year. The problem is Florida's offensive line is infinitely worse. So the running game is not going to really work against Georgia. You're going to have to rely on Graham Mertz to win you this game. And Graham Mertz not beating Georgia with 2- and 3-yard dunk passes and an occasional 20-yard out route to something named Ricky Pearsall, who was an Arizona throwaway, Arizona State throwaway, whatever. It's just not going to happen. Sorry. It's just not. You're going to be running for your life. On the other hand, Georgia does protect Carson Beck, and Florida can't get to the QB anyway. So Carson Beck's going to have all day to sit in the pocket, slice and dice, carve up that Florida defense, which is improved over last year. But, hey, I've seen Florida's defense get taken advantage of. Have you? Yeah, I have. I wonder if Georgia's just going to run up and pound you, line up and pound Florida into submission. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Kentucky did it, and Georgia's got an offensive line and some running backs too. Now, we don't have a Ray Davis, but Georgia's combination of running backs can get the job done. But I do hope they let Carson Beck sling it around, though. You know my buddy Carstonian Beckworth, Carson Beck, you know where he's from, right? That's right, he's from Freakville. He's from Jacksonville, went to high school in Jacksonville, won a state title in high school in Jacksonville. It's a homecoming for my man Carstonian Beckworth, and I hope Mike Bobo and company let him put on a show. Yeah, it would be easy and humiliating, really, for the Florida man if we just lined up and ran it down their throat for 4 quarters, which, you know, we already know that can be done relatively easily. See the Kentucky game as exhibits A, B, C, D, 11, 12, and 13. But I do hope they let Carstonian Beckworth sling it around. I really do. Some of Georgia's running backs are getting back healthy again. Roderick Robinson might be good to go. Kendall Milton. Never mind Dejon Edwards. We're going to put a walk-on out there to embarrass you a couple of times. My boy, Cash Money Jones. He's my cousin. You know all white people are related. Cash Jones is my... I can't... Type about it. I'm not going to delete that. I'm not editing that out either. I should just end the video there. all white people are related. Oh, man. All right, Swamp Rat, come get you some of this, bitch.